going to be having a look at DC Superheroes Catwoman. Catwoman was probably one of the little harder to find figures of this wave. I probably would say between her and the Clayface, they were the two chase figures. For those that don't collect figures enough to know, a chase figure tends to be the short-packed or short-cased figures. And if I'm not mistaken, Catwoman I think was only a cased one per box, meaning that she was a little harder to come by. And let's get a look at the packaging before we get the Catwoman figure opened up. Once again, it's on the purple backed card, which I prefer much more than the yellow starburst effect that we normally get now. And here we have the bottom there, we have Catwoman. On the back of the package, we have the other figures in the wave. Excuse me. The other figures in the wave are Clayface. We have a bit of a disappointing Joker. We have the repaint Bane, Two-Face. We have Night Shadow Batman. We have the new Batgirl. We have Bruce Wayne to Batman. Of course, we got Catwoman down here. The Black Cowl, the very nice Batman, and then Nightwing. Not really much to say about the packaging. Being that this is generic packaging, you're not going to get any write-ups or anything on the characters. This packaging is pretty much the same for every figure that's in this wave. There we go. Also interesting to point out, it says each sold separately and subject to availability, available August 2007. Color and decorations may vary from those shown. Rather interesting. Also want to point out too that in the figure itself, she is sporting goggles, as you guys can see. On the back of the card, however, which I think you guys can see all right, she is not sporting goggles. So I don't honestly know if you can take the goggles off. I'm hoping you can, because I always consider Catwoman, at least the latest incarnation of Catwoman, I like the fact that you can, her goggles usually are at the top of her cowl and not that she's wearing them. So there you have Catwoman. What we'll do is we'll get this package opened up and we will get a closer look at Catwoman. Stick around. Wow, that is one nice looking Catwoman. Get a closer look at the figure here. Now, granted, this is an older wave. This is an older set compared to like the DC Universe figures. But I would have to say though, despite the fact that this is the older, we're looking at what, 2 years old now, definitely a really, really nice figure. And really glad I picked it up. As you can see, she's wearing the knapsack here. It does appear like the knapsack does come off. This looks like this is a tab that you can unfasten. I won't take it off. I know I always leave off taking off accessories like this. The only reason for it, once again, I don't know. It might be a little harder to get back on, possibly. Speaking of the knapsack, though, the one downside to the knapsack, the way it's strapped, is that some of the shoulder joints, especially this one right here, you can't quite get the shoulder down enough. I mean, I tried bending it, but as you can see, bending it here, I'm gonna break the arm off if I'm not careful. So I'm gonna just leave it on for the time being. Speaking also of leaving on, it doesn't look to me like well, I mean, if you guys can see that, it does look like you can take off the, yeah, it does look like you can take off the goggles. Now here's the downside though, and it might be enough that I might just leave it on. It doesn't look like if you took the goggles off, you could probably put them on easy enough. It looks like there's a bit of adhesive that is actually keeping the goggles on. Not a strong enough adhesive that you couldn't take them off. The only downside though, and I think you guys can see it, see if you were to take the goggles off, her eyes are actually sunken in. There is almost a cut mark, and all the area of her eye is actually recessed. So if you were to take this off, it would look like her mouth was a separate part from her eyes. And that's a bit disappointing because I would have liked to have actually had the goggles off. For that reason, I'm going to leave them on. If you guys have this figure and you want to take the goggles off, you probably, again, you could, but you're going to end up having basically an area where a shape of glasses, the goggles, you're going to have that shape of her eyes sunken in. And it's going to look really weird, I think, if you take them off. So I would probably advise not doing it. In the way of articulation, she has articulation free range in her head. She has articulation in the torso. As I mentioned, she has articulation in the shoulder and also in the arm. Again, there's a bit of a problem here moving the arm just because of where the strap is located. There is articulation in the hand, articulation in the leg, both left or side articulation, and also front to back. There is articulation in her thigh, in her knee, and also in her foot. Really, really nice figure. Her accessories include a whip, a whip that she can hold. I gotta say, if you've seen my DC Direct Nightfall Catwoman, her whip I think is a lot better in this figure than it is on that one. For one thing, her hand isn't really rubbery. This is more of a solid plastic, and she holds the whip a lot better. She also does come with a cat statue. I wouldn't say it's a real cat. It definitely looks like it's supposed to be a statue. Makes sense too, because she's a cat burglar. She steals cat-related things. Speaking of stealing, she also comes with a set of beads, I guess, if you want to consider them beads, that she can hold in her hand. Probably would hold better in this hand, but because she's got the whip, I probably would have it on display on this hand. Definitely looks to me like the one accessory that could get lost if you're not too careful. So you definitely want to put that somewhere if you don't have it on display. Overall, really, really nice figure. The one downside to it is the fact that the eye area, like I had mentioned and didn't describe all that well, but the eye area is shaped like goggles, and the fact that it's sunken in. Yes, you could take off the goggles, but it's going to look really silly on the character. But overall, decent figure, and being that it's a chase, it's a little harder to find, but definitely worth picking up if you can find it. That was DC Superheroes Catwoman, and that hit the spot. I'll see you guys next time.